what does it mean to start with why? And what impact does having a defined company culture and a set of core values really have on a team's bottom line? In other words, do you really need to slow down and think about this stuff? Does it even matter? I recently sat down with one of my favorite people, Ryan McCarty, to get his perspective on these questions and several more. Ryan and I could talk for hours about building real estate teams, but we tried to keep this interview focused on starting with why and how culture, vision, and mission impact a company's profitability and, most importantly, your quality of life. Ryan and I met when he was a Keller Williams team leader several years ago. He recognized that my company, R.E.A Staffing, could help him recruit more agents by helping him solve their biggest problem, which is, of course, hiring great people. He's changed brokerages a few times since then, and I've honestly lost count of how many top agents I've helped him recruit. Now he's a consultant with Reside Real Estate in San Francisco, and he focuses on coaching agents who want to grow profitable teams. He has amazing insight, and our interview is chock full of valuable nuggets, so stay tuned. Oh, and if you're new to this channel, hello and welcome. My name is Vanessa Rosenblum, and I'm the president of R.E.A Staffing. On this channel, we focus on fostering careers in real estate and growing real estate teams. If this is a topic you care about, make sure to hit the subscribe button. I post new content weekly. All right, let's get into the interview. Hi, Ryan. Thanks for joining me today. How are you?
Hey, Vanessa, I'm great. How are you?
Good. Well, let's just dive into this. So, can you just give everyone listening a little bit of background? Where do you work and what do you do?
So I work for a company called Side. It's based out of San Francisco. I am a consultant for Side. My focus is on the team building side of the agent's business. So what Side is, we're really a technology forward company that really is a coaching and consulting focus around the real estate agent's business. So we coach them on different levels of their business, how to ramp up their business. And where I am is on the team building side. So once you've ramped up and you've got enough business and your business is solid and you're looking to grow and kind of widen your reach and have staff and team members, I focus on helping agents identify talent and hiring them.
Fantastic. Well, you're the perfect person to talk to me about what I want to talk about today, which is creating a business based around your values, having a clear vision and mission. So, when you have an agent who feels like they're ready to start growing a team, where do you start? What kind of advice do you give them before they start adding people to their team?
That's a really powerful question for me because in the past, coming from a background in real estate where I had my own team, in the beginning of coaching people and consulting them, I just kind of figured everyone should have a team. That was like the next step in having a team. And so I would coach people to hire and find a buyer's agent and find a showing assistant and find an assistant. And what I realized is, first of all, not everyone was ready for that. Not everyone was ready to embrace being a leader, and not everyone wanted it. And that really kind of drew me to like helping people when they came to me, helping them identify why. When they would say to me, I think I need to hire, or I think I need a partner, or I have too much business. I need help, or I want a buyer's agent, or there's this person who wants to join my team. In the past, I would kind of say, oh, that's exciting. Let's do this. Let's figure this out. And what I realized over time is that it's really important to get them thinking about why would I do this, and having a conversation around, what do you seek to get out of this? What would this person do? How do you intend to lead them? So really just kind of slowing the conversation down, and whether they've thought about it or not, hopefully getting them started on thinking about their why and how would that look and who would they report to and what would you have them do, and what kind of person are you looking for? Maybe a missing person type of report kind of conversation, really. So just slowing the conversation down and getting them to think about, what does that look like? And, how do you see your team and who leads it? Who's the coach and who's mentoring the people? And, what does that look like? So I want to slow down and figure out why. What are you looking to accomplish? Do you want more business? Do you want more time back? Do you want both? Do you want to work less make more? What is it that you really want to accomplish?
Perfect. And I have two tangents I want to go on from there. I guess the first is, what do you say to people who they're on their own and they say, I want to hire a buyer's agent, like before they have administrative staff?
That's a really common, very, very common question. And I've also encountered a lot of people that, they come into my world or ask me questions, or now I'm working with them, or in the past I've recruited people like that, that they've missed, in my mind, missed that step of hiring that operations person or an admin. And what I say to them is that, when you're an individual agent, there, whether we want to admit it, know it, or let go of the task or whatever it is, there is a ton of work on our plates that are not, really lead generation or bottom line based tasks that we're doing every day. And now we hire a buyer's agent, right? And now we've got two people in our world that there's a ton of things that are likely on our plate that are taking us away from getting in front of more business or taking better care of the business that we have. And so what I say to people is, there's, with all that said, now it's not just you, but so you're in the beginning, you're kind of your own administrative assistant, right? So you're wearing two hats. You're the agent, you're the buyer's agent or the listing agent, and you're also the operations manager of your organization.
Mm-hmm.
The moment you hire another buyer's agent, now you're that for two people, right? And so for me, it's really important to get them to see that, if you're hiring a buyer's agent, how do you help? You're becoming a leader, right? And you're leading an organization, you're leading someone else, you're working with someone else who is taking on all double of the administrative duties now. And so, if you don't have an administrative assistant, you are one. When I say it like that to them, I think a lot of people do get it. But then yet, and this, there are a ton of agents that just, I think when they're in their height and it's their craziness, they're like, oh my God, I wish I had someone. I really need help right now. And then by the time they might get to either, someone like us, they're not as crazy in that moment. And they're like, well, I don't really know what I'd have them do right now. Right.
Mm-hmm.
But basically, I mean, to go back to your question, hiring that buyer's agent before you have an administrative help, well, now you're going to be an assistant for two people. So that's, for me, that's what that is.
Yeah, and what I see too is when they finally do bring in an admin, if you have multiple salespeople working together, but with no administrative foundation, when you bring in that foundation, it's a lot more work. It's a huge ask because now you have a bunch of agents who are kind of doing their own thing their own way with their own systems. And now instead of just wrangling one person and getting systems, you've got to get everybody on board. So it's a lot harder to fix that problem the further down the road you go.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think you've got to, a lot of my conversations with agents, we know where we're at, right? When we start, consulting with someone, coaching with someone, it's really easy to kind of identify where we're at, and they have a pretty, semi-clear vision of where they want to go. And a lot of agents like to skip over, if we're lining up dominoes, they're skipping over all of the ones that they don't want to hit to try to get to that next one, and they think that's going to happen through other salespeople. And what I want to slow them down and help them think about is you're taking from an individual producer, now you're rolling this into a business, right? So as you begin to build your organization, you have to have that operations set up, right? So I think you have to line up your dominoes and you have to knock them over, which independent contractors or entrepreneurs, we're not always that great at, like following the next step. And so I think now we have to think about this as a CEO, as a business owner. What am I missing in my world? And you don't want to add, like you said, 2 or 3, salespeople to that. That's just more, that's just more unorganized workflow, if you will. Yeah, I think you have to start with a really solid foundation. And honestly, before you can really, help another salesperson or work alongside of another salesperson, I think effectively, I think you have to be able to have a, speak to the fact that you have a solid system. Most agents, they're starving for a system, and yet we're not programmed to be the system maintainer, right? And so I think we have to slow down and really set up a solid foundation in order to build that momentum to get to that domino, that next domino that we want to knock over and our next goal. So I think it's about really just slowing down, which is hard for salespeople sometimes, and just setting it up, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot more fun to talk about adding salespeople to your team than it is to write out your listing checklist or figure out what your post-close process is going to look like. So I can appreciate and empathize with where they're coming from. But yeah, I completely agree. That foundation can completely sets the direction for your company, and you'll just continue to have stress and turnover and attract lower level salespeople into your organization if you're not able to offer the value that comes with those systems and the administrative support. Because you're right, they're hungry for the system. So why would a buyer's agent join your team if you're not able to offer solid support? So
that's exactly it. I think the value of joining someone, right, is that they have something that you need. They want to learn from you, right? When you're joining an organization, you're hoping to gain something, right, that maybe is missing in your world. And salespeople, they're often attracted to someone who's doing more business than them or has more leads than they do. And if they're jumping into that world and it's chaotic and you can't even really predict, or anticipate the business because you don't have your operations or your system down, it's going to be a really rough ride. On a side note, this wasn't really your question, but I think a lot of times salespeople come into our world and we realize that we're missing some operations, right? And so we think, wow, maybe you could be my assistant as well. And we kind of hybrid, that salesperson into also being our administrative assistant. And I'll tell you, I don't know about you, but I'm sure you've seen it like I have. Almost every time, that hybrid role, it doesn't always work. It usually doesn't work because the behavioral, style of those two roles are very different. The goals are very different. To sit someone in a seat and say, here's the system and organize me and set me up and run my operations. And now, oh wait, here's the buyer and do this open house. I think you have to have the right skill set, right? The right behavioral style, the right focus. And so I would just caution everyone, the hybrid roles, in theory, it sounds amazing, right? So I can, oh, wow, and I can just give you buyers and that's how I'll pay you. And I think a lot of times that hire is made based off of fear, right? Based off of, well, I don't want to take on this expense. So if I hire a salesperson, I can do commission. I can give them a couple deals and maybe pay a lower base. And I think we're led in that moment by lack of options or lack of guidance or the fear of the expense in their head. They don't see it as an investment in a person. They're still stuck in, oh, this is an expense. And so they're trying to kind of avoid the pain of having to pay a salary every couple of weeks. So they're splitting it and making this hybrid position, which I would just say it doesn't work long term.
No, I could not agree with you more. And thank you for bringing that up. I can actually, as you were describing that, a situation came to mind. This was years ago. A client I'd been trying to work with calls me. He goes, okay, fine, I get it. I'm ready. I'm in the office. I'm dealing with this beast of an escrow. I've got contracts everywhere. And my quote assistant is out showing property to my buyer. This is messed up. I need a real assistant. And basically he hired an aspiring agent to be on that hybrid role. And he didn't want to do the transaction work. He wanted to go out and show property to buyers. And guess what? That's what he figured out how to do. And, the lead agent is sitting there dealing with transaction paperwork instead of generating more business. So I see that time and time again. It's a good cautionary tale to tell.
I know that firsthand. I mean, when I started in the real estate business back in 2003, I was hired by a friend of mine to be his assistant, and that lasted literally about a day. I think I might have touched one file, and back then we were putting files together and paper stacking, right, and all in order. I might have, let's just say I did two files, but what I saw the need was more on helping him with the buyers, and next thing you know, I'm showing properties, and I became more of a showing assistant within a matter of days, and it was just a better fit for me. It was more exciting. It was it just was a better fit. And so, but what suffered? The files, the paperwork. So now there's
Mhm.
two of us, and we're showing more properties. We're converting more deals. We have more clients than we know what to do with, and no one's doing the paperwork, right? So there was
Mhm.
still this struggle on the paperwork side. So I've experienced this firsthand, and you want to play to skill sets, and you want to play to goals, and you want to play to the person's natural style. And I learned that firsthand, and I'm very grateful for being hired as an assistant. And became a back then we didn't even really have showing assistants, but I became a showing assistant by default because that was the natural fit. It was more of the need, and the paperwork just stacked up.
Mhm.
So
So I want to go back to, you were talking about why earlier on in our conversation, and you and I are both really big fans of Simon Sinek and his book Start with Why. So I wanted to talk about why that resonated with you and how you apply that in your coaching. And, you were talking about the why, like why do you want this, but then that really goes into your values too, like what do you stand for, and how does that play into your conversation with clients, with agents?
yeah, I love that. For me, Simon Sinek and any of his messages, they just really resonate with me because it really just kind of it just dials it back to um, what it is that you really want or what you're about or alignment, right? And I think that, as an example, I was talking to an agent the other day. Mega agent has a team, and he was setting goals for his buyer's agent, right? And we were on a call, and he was saying that this particular buyer's agent should do 10 million, right? And he had only done 3 million in volume the year before. And I said, tell me more about, did he set that goal for himself? And he said, no, no, I think he's capable of doing 10 million. And he was having some frustration with this particular agent, and he just felt like, why isn't he doing more? And I said, well, let's start there. Let's start with that why. Does he want to do 10 million? What does that look like for him? What does he need? What excites him? What does he want to accomplish? And I think that a lot of agents or just people in general, I think that whatever we have in our own head of what we want to accomplish and what we want to earn, and a lot of us have like, okay, I want to do, if this year I'm going to do 500 GCI, well, next year I want to do 600. Not everyone has that. Not everyone has that drive, or not everyone. They might have drive, but it's drive towards something different. Maybe their quality of life is different. Maybe they want to take more time off. Maybe they want to be with their kids. Maybe they only want to earn $100,000 a year versus your goal of 600,000 for them. And I think it's important to connect with people and figure out what it is that they want. What that does is that eliminates, once you're clear on that, well, sit down with your people. Well, what do you want to accomplish, and how does that look? And, what excites you, about, it may not even be money, right? It may be, what, I want to earn this, and I just want to travel, and I want to put some in the bank, and I want to spend time with my kids. And not everyone has to rule the world like a lot of agents think, right? And I think we kind of project our own why onto other people, and then now there's this expectation, right? And when that doesn't happen, we become frustrated or disappointed. And so, to me, that's why it's important to really have a clear why, right down to that level of thinking with people on, what are your goals and how does that fit in with mine, and can we get there together? And okay, maybe you are not a $50 million producer, but do I have room in my world for you, and how can I help you get to hit your goals, right? And I think it's like any other relationship. We've all had relationships or friendships that we get into that we didn't really spend enough time figuring out, what we align on. I tell agents this when they're hiring any level, whether it's a buyer's agent, executive assistant, whatever they're hiring. You're dating. When you're in that interview process, look at this almost like a date, right? So if you're sitting down and you want kids, well, find out if they want kids. right? And when do you want to have kids, and how many kids do you want to have? So have a mutual expectations conversation, but within that, figure out the why. You know, if someone says to you that, oh my God, my first year in the business, I did this and I really want to get to 10 million. Find out the why. Tell me to go from 5 million to 10 million. What do you do with that? What are you funding? What are you creating? That extra income. What do you do with that? Where are you going? What are you doing? And when someone says, oh wow, I didn't I didn't I didn't really think about that, but you know what? I would love to put the money aside to help this or to fund that. I remember I was one time recruiting someone who had done 20 million the last 3 years in a row. And I find that people kind of have a feeling, around it's about 3 years when they start to get kind of frustrated with their ceiling. Some sooner, right? Or some they'll tolerate it for a long time. But this particular guy, he had hit like 18 million, 20 million, 22 million, and he was right there hovering at that 20 million. And I had met him, and had interviews with him, and he had told me a few times he wanted to go from 20 to 30 million. And I had never asked him why until about 9 months of, kind of reconnecting and seeing him around. I sat down with him and I said, I'm curious to know, like, to go from 22 or 20, right, to 30, like that's a $10 million increase in volume, right? That's X number of commission. Like, what do you do with that? And where'd that number come from? And he looked at me and he goes, well, what do you mean? And I said, well, is that like, do you feel like that's just a natural progression in your career? Is that a notch in your belt? Like, what are you accomplishing by getting there? He goes, oh, I get what you mean. He goes, well, that's easy. He goes, right now, my mom lives with my aunt and my cousins and a house over here, and they have a bunch of kids. I would really love to just buy a house for her. And that piece for me was like, oh, okay, I get it. And now I saw the heart of that number, right? What what
Mm.
that number would get him for his mom. And it was really, I mean, that excites me. And so I could get behind it even more, right? And I ultimately recruited him. He joined our organization and I became his coach. And when I would coach him and he would start to veer off, I would pull him back by just saying, does that fall under helping you get to the place where you're building enough business to fund your mom's house, right? And so I think we have to connect the head and the heart, and that's the why for me, right? And when we can get curious and ask about it, we can align with it or not, right? And I think that's when you're on a team and you're working with people, you have to have core values. You have to be working towards a common goal, and you have to be able to get behind other people's goals, whether it's someone you're working for or with, or they're working for you. I think the why it's the heart, right? It's the thing that when you're chipping away at the work and you're exhausted, if you know the heart of it, you can pull someone back around to it.
Absolutely. And I think this plays, this plays into recruiting on the administrative side as well. I mean, people want to align with people who align with their values, and they want to know why they're doing what they're doing. Like, what is the bigger picture? And so
Hmm.
if that agent can translate their why, help their mom buy a house, into a why that the team can get behind, that's like defines their core values, then you can attract people who, even when things get hard and difficult and the agent has a bad day or the bad quarter, they're still in it with you, because
Yeah.
it's the head and the heart. It's not just about the paycheck. And everybody talks about, oh, I want to have people who aren't here for the paycheck. I want people who are committed to my mission. But one, they make it just about them instead of about what's in it for their team, and it, everybody's in for themselves at some level, right? And then two, a lot of them don't really articulate it in the first place. So can you think of teams that who do this really well? You don't have to name names, but like what is different about a team leader, or an agent who has a team who has a very clear set of core values that are like actively implemented in their business?
Yeah, I can. And I can think of teams that, I can think of one in particular that that they just get it, and I can think of another team that struggled with it and lost talent because the leader struggled with it and didn't connect with it and share it, and then finally kept continuing to attract talent, but once he was able to communicate it, was able to retain talent a lot longer. So yeah, I think that if I was to think about the first team that I have in my mind, the leader is really, here's the deal. If I can go backwards a little bit, like a lot of
Mm-hmm.
agents, they will naturally attract um, people to them, like that want to work with them, right? So, someone gets their license, or someone, that they do a deal with, or they're in the same office, and oh my God, I really like the way you work. Like, there's going to be this natural attraction where people start to kind of connect and organically partner or organically join the team, right? And and that's great. That's that kind of natural energy, that natural attraction. But I think in dialing that in and being able to share your vision and share your goals and share your why and align with theirs and get behind their goal and their why. When you start, the moment you hire a buyer's agent or an executive assistant, you're a leader. You step over the line of being this independent contractor, fly by the seat of your pants, entrepreneur, working alone on an island, to now all of a sudden you're a leader, and you're leading people, and they're putting their trust in you. They're looking up to you. You know, your superpower is your influence, right? And I think you have to be purposeful with that. And I think the way that you do that is sharing that. And so this particular team, they're really great with getting behind each other's goals, having mutual expectations, conversations. They're purposeful with just aligning on what they're accomplishing. And he recently came into my world a couple months ago, and they had massive, and they had over 100 million in volume. And we began to look at the team org chart and really help figure out, like, okay, so here's where we're at, and how do we lean in on everyone's strengths? We know everyone's goals. We work well together. How do we lean in on everyone's strengths to 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 get everyone to the next level, right? And I think the leader is really knows his agents and his teams, their strengths, right? What they're into, what they like, their goals. And what I see the most is alignment, less frustration. In other teams I could think of where that doesn't exist, there is a lot of kind of pulling people to come with you, or chasing them down to find them to get them to come with you. And or talent will show up in your world, but can you keep talent, right? Can you,
Mm-hmm.
it's one thing for them to come to you and say, I want to work with you. It's quite another to grow and retain them. And that's where I think, having that why, having that communication, not just saying how many houses you want to sell this year. Okay, great, go sell them, right? That's not leadership. Um, that's not connecting on a why. That's, at the end of the day, we're human beings, and we're all, getting up every day, throwing our emotions, and our work into what we're doing, right? And I think it's important to align with others and to connect and to be working towards, each other's goals. And that's where I see the biggest thing for me is retention, and not just retention, but growing with each other. Watching the others around you and with you and on side of you, like watching them really grow and be happy. It's one thing to hit your goals and sell double the houses next year. It's another thing to do that and really be happy.
Amen. That's absolutely true. And yeah, and I think one of the greatest privileges of being a leader is that you get to bring other people up with you. I mean, I think that's
Oh,
really the joy of it is that giving back and bringing people along with you and developing them. And really, as soon as you're a leader, it's no longer about you. And I see too many sales agents continue to have everything be about them when they have other people working for them. And it's just no longer about you. Like Simon
yeah,
Sinek says, when you're a leader, if things go well, it's thanks to your team. When things go bad, it's your fault, right?
Yeah.
It's not about you anymore. But
Some of the most
I
fun that,
yeah.
sorry, go ahead.
No, 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 go ahead.
I would just say some of the best conversations that I have where I really just like talk about it for hours with my teams. There's one agent I think of in particular that he did a really great job. He's an incredible agent. He's attracted some really great talent. Um, he hired an executive assistant, in fact, through R.E.A, right? She was very talented. And he had an incredible buyer's agent that I helped him connect with that I had known and helped him recruit. And they were, year one, they were super successful in working together. And I remember a time I was coaching with him, and he said, this is working so well, and I love her, and I love him, and this is great, and this is incredible. I don't ever want to lose them. And he said, how do I keep them? And that was like, I'm like, oh, this is fun, right? We're not talking about how to
Hmm.
get them to sell more houses. We're not talking about how to help them with conversion. The conversation now evolved into how do I keep them? And and it was a really cool conversation because I said, well, what's important to them? You know, what do they? Why do you think they're with you? They came to you for this, right? And they're staying with you because of that. But how do you keep them? Like, have you asked? Have you asked them? Like, how do I work with you forever? What needs to happen for me to know that you're always going to be with me? How do I help you grow? Is growth important to you? Of course it is. Like, how do I help you grow? But we assume a lot of times that growing means, well, I want to double my business next year because that's what we all think, right? And the conversation when he came back to me, and after I sent him with that kind of homework assignment, well, go figure out how. Ask them, right? Ask them, how do I keep you forever? How do we work together forever? How do I know that you're so happy that you're never going to leave me? And what he had assumed in his head of how to keep them was very different than what they said to him. It wasn't about doubling their business. It was about, this is where I need to land it in, and what I need to earn, and I want to feel like this. I want to know that I'm growing with you. I want to take on a leadership role within your team. I could see myself mentoring other people. It's really important to me that I grow my leadership skills. And so now this particular lead agent, you're not growing a salesperson, you've you're growing a leader, right? And can you get behind that? And it was such a cool conversation because what we have in our head and what we think other people want, or how we think we can keep them or help them, is oftentimes very different than what they really want. And I think that's why you have to slow down. You have to really know and connect. And it's not about, we work with people that it's not about teaching them how to sell more houses. It's about teaching them how to do that and be happy and spend time with their kids or their partner or travel or, you know, give of their time or in this business, no one is really, oftentimes teaching us, like, can you go to class on how to write a contract or how to lead gen more or how to farm? Yeah, all of that exists. But what about, like, how do I have a solid business and also have a really great life, right? Because
Hmm.
real estate should fund our perfect life, but I don't know that enough of us have those conversations, with 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 our organization, right? Whether it's within the office, or whether it's the office manager or the sales manager, or it's just in your own individual team. I think that's a trickle down, right? Like, or up, or whatever you want to say. Like, we should be having those conversations with our people, and that those are fun for me when we can really get into and be curious about what makes a person tick, and how do I just stay with you forever, or how do I know that you're happy and you're excelling and we work together forever because I love what we're doing, and
I
people will
love
tell you.
that. Absolutely. I'm curious to hear about the team that was struggling with this and then how that agent made this transition because I think a lot of people, well, I hear this all the time. I'm not a good manager. I'm not a good leader. I just need someone who can manage themselves. I just need someone to show up, shut up, do the job, and I'll pay them. And of course, that doesn't work long term. So, how does somebody make that transition into being an effective leader and manager?
The particular agent that I'm thinking about, I think a lot of times when we make a change, or we transition into, I think it comes from the pain, or the loss, right? So
Mm-hmm.
when we realize we need to grow, it's sometimes, unfortunately, after the fact, right? So this particular person had an incredible executive assistant, and great team, and it was rolling along. And I don't know that she was necessarily connecting with the why of this person that was working with the team on the operations side, their long term goals, right? And so this person was, at a quick glance, like killing the job, right? And everyone seemed to be fine and happy, but the particular candidate, or I'm sorry, the particular operations manager didn't feel a long term growth path within the organization, and I and had found something else and was moving on. And when that pain showed up, now the person, that I was coaching brought it to me, like, how did this happen? And at that point, it was too late, right? And now they needed to replace this person. And I think that came from the conversation, right? But it was from the pain of losing someone like that. So a lot of times, I think when it's like you have to build out after that happens. Okay, so okay, that did not feel good. I thought we were on the right path, right? I thought we were connected online, and everyone was happy, and because I was, I thought you were too, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I think we have to ask, like, this, ask, communicate, right? Check in. How are you doing? How are you feeling? Because I'm in love with this. Are you? Or how do you? What How do you get to a place? Just like I said a few minutes ago, like, how do you get to a place where you're super happy and you're growing and you feel like this is the next level for you? So this particular person, through the pain of losing talent, now would come to me, and once the new hire was there, and then it branched out into the rest of the team. How do I make sure that this doesn't happen with this person, right? And that's the conversation. And now I've watched her do a much better job of really, retaining her people, but that's through understanding them, and figuring out how do you want to grow? What's next for you, and how do I help you get there? How do I create room for you? Like, do you eventually want to, you know, um, do you see yourself in a different operations spot on my team? Do you see yourself evolving someday into a sales role? I think sometimes we're afraid to ask. Like, we don't want to.
You don't want to know the answer. Yeah.
Yeah. What are we afraid to know? What are we afraid to find out? But that's the thing. I think when you're blindsided by that, it's typically because you didn't ask. You didn't ask, or you didn't listen. If they told you,
Mm-hmm.
you didn't listen, or you didn't listen and then ask. You know what I mean? Like, well, tell me about
Yeah.
that. How does that look? And when does that happen? And when do you want to see yourself getting there? So that's for me. A lot of people, I think, like, I know I do. I learn from my mistakes and my pains, and I learn a lot from what other people do that I look and go, oh, I don't know that I would have done that. And I'm definitely going to build a system around, or a process around, not doing that. So I think, yeah, I think it's through having clarity. I don't think we realize that when we start working with, like, that's another relationship. It's no different, than a friendship or a partnership. You're in a business partnership, right? So shouldn't you treat it like a relationship? Shouldn't you check in? And shouldn't you figure out, like, are we on the right path? Like, where are we headed? Are you good with this? So what's next for you, right?
Yes, and I also think that, kind of going back to what you said earlier about how the agent's goal might be to double their business, and they're so focused on the numbers. But I could think it, like, in my own organization, my executive assistant, obviously she wants to be paid fairly, but it's not about that. It's she's proud of taking care of her team. It's about being appreciated and acknowledged, and having that stability, and knowing that she's doing a job well. That's what she needs. That makes her
Mm-hmm.
happy, and she's amazing. And I think it's very easy for age salespeople to fall into the trap of thinking that just everyone just needs to make more money, or they need to hit the sales goals, and that's what's going
Yes.
to satisfy them. And then, because, like, for my assistant, if I didn't acknowledge her, or if I accuse her of doing something incorrectly, because she's never wrong, right? That
Mm-hmm.
hurts her spirit. And I see that with a lot of agents who they they don't recognize the innate needs of the people who support them, and they just sort of plow forward, and then they're surprised when those people are unhappy and leave.
That's such an incredible point. I mean, if you were to just look at behavioral style differences between someone who is, a salesperson or an agent, right? Like typically, and this isn't the case across the board, we're risk takers, right? We're fly by the seat of your pants. We jump into this world where there's no paycheck and it's commission, and there's no insurance, and there's no, Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, right? And now we hire, someone in the operations or the admin role, right? And we don't realize that that role, typically behaviorally, what they're more inclined to is structure, right? Security, process oriented. They don't fly by the seat of their pants. They want to know that Monday through Friday, this is where I'm working, this is my space, right? They like the behaviors can be so different, but yet we treat them as if they behave like us oftentimes,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I've seen people, even the way that they would offer a job, it's more commission based, versus a consistent salary, and that often scares people. I see this often with people that are making their first hire, right? So they'll say, okay, I'll give you this really low base salary, and I'll pay you off of my production, and this is where you can get, and maybe that is a really great comp plan, but it scares the candidate. And are you kidding me? No, like, yes, I know that you're a busy agent, and yes, I know I can probably get there, but if they're not risk takers, right? Like, and
Yeah.
so I think we have to know who's in front of us, right? We have to play to their strengths, we have to play to our strength. We have to, we can only see others through the filter that we have over our own eyes of how we think, right? Like, how do we think we would want this? And sometimes we just have to ask. We have to stop assuming that, that this is how I would want it. This would excite me, or I would love to be able to make, a percentage of some agents, of the business, because that I could make more money. But we have to know, behavioral differences, and we have to be curious and ask about the other person. So I think, on many levels, it's communication, and we have to stop assuming everyone is like us,
Yes. I think there's also an element of empathy in there too. Because I think if you can practice empathy when you're interacting with everybody, right? Hopefully we can all do that, right? But especially people who are not exactly like us,
Yeah.
then you can come from a better place of understanding, ask the right
Hmm.
questions, and
Yeah,
and
and
seek to
active
understand.
listening. Yeah,
Yeah.
sorry, active listening. Something that's hard for a lot of salespeople, right? If we have that higher kind of assertive, fast-paced behavioral style, right? Like, um, it's hard when you ask a question. It's either a lot of people won't write the answer down, but even let's just say you're taking notes, right? You ask the question, you write the answer down. But do we stop and go, okay, my next question is embedded in their answer. So when they say this to me, let me discover why. Tell me why that's important to you. Tell me what excites you about that. And like, really being curious and layering down, right?
Mm.
Then you'll get
Mhm.
it. But I think a lot of, we're just going through and we're listening for the answer. Does that make sense? Oh yeah, that makes sense. But does it? It makes sense in your filter, but what does it mean to them? You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah, I love that. I mean, I think a good interviewer can ask 10 main questions and just drill down on those and get everything they could ever need. I mean, the real answer is always
Hmm.
below the first response.
Always.
So, always. Well, I thank you so much. I think this was such a valuable conversation for any agent who either has a team or is thinking about growing a team. You added so much value and so many interesting things to think about. So thank you for your time today. I really appreciate it.
You're very welcome. Thank you, Vanessa.